If you happen to be the designer of a shooter, and you're trying to come up with interesting ideas for exotic weapons, abilities, and superpowers, for each idea you have, I'd like you to ask yourself the following question. Is what I am providing the player here more or less efficient than just shooting the enemy in the face with a gun? In playing Mouse PI and Saros in recent weeks, I've been struck, not for the first time, by how often shooters, or indeed any kind of game with gun combat, like survival horror, fall back on the same guns, acquired in the same sequence. First the pistol, then the shotgun, then some kind of rapid automatic gun, then you might have a sniper rifle or a rocket launcher or an even bigger and more rapid automatic gun. Basically every 90s shooter followed that formula. Doom, pistol shotgun chain gun, Duke Nukem 3D, pistol shotgun chain gun cannon, Shadow Warrior, shurikens, riot gun, dual Uzis. Trust me, they functioned the same. I suppose this formula is so rigid because there are precious few ways to innovate upon the concept of shooting things with a gun. It's not like melee combat where you have to watch for tells, optimize your positioning and angle of attack and wait for an opening. You point to the thing you want dead and you press the button. Next week, in the advanced course, we'll cover making sure there are no solid objects between you and the thing you want dead. It's brutally efficient is the point, and if you want to add some variety to that action, there are really only 3 or 4 variables you can play with. How much damage it does, how quickly it can do it, and the effective range and accuracy. So your average starting pistol will sit in the middle of all of that, does okay damage, it's okay at mid-range, and it fires once for every push of the button. So it can be as fast or as slow as your long-suffering index finger can cope with. But when adding more guns, you don't want to simply up all those stats. That would just make the new gun better all round, and there'd no longer be any reason to use the first gun. You want something balanced. You want every gun to have a specific situational purpose, or there'd be no point in having them all. I think that's something id Software tends to be bad at. Why on earth, for example, would you ever go back to using the pistol in Doom after you've got the chain gun, which is faster and uses the same ammo? Or the nail gun in Quake after you've gotten the super nail gun? An entire nail gun is a lot of dead weight to add to a gun belt that's already threatening to pull your trousers down. The rule of thumb when balancing the numbers is to always take away something for everything that you add. So let's take that pistol with its middling stats and pump its damage up really high. To compensate, we have to take points out of its firing speed and its effective range. And hey presto, we've just invented the shotgun. And in brief, the established standard array of guns is just what results when you jigger with the stats of a basic gun in every conceivable way. Increase the firing speed, reduce accuracy and damage, and you've got a machine gun. Pump accuracy, range, and damage all the way to the top, and we have to completely bottom out the firing speed, and we have a sniper rifle. I suppose ammo capacity and rarity of ammunition can also be fiddled with, but those are all subheadings of firing speed, if you ask me. My point was, this is basically all you can do with guns, and that's why the same ones come up so much. But many games try to expand the formula in their own unique ways, venture past the rocket launcher to the later number keys in a lot of shooters, and you'll enter what I tend to think of as the realms of the exotic, the point where the designers took the opportunity, now they'd gotten the basic workaday necessities out of the way, to have a bit of fun and exercise their creativity. But the exotics still rarely explore beyond the basic gun formula upon analysis. The classic example, of course, is the BFG 9000 from Doom, a great big fuck-off dishwasher of a gun whose slow-moving green projectile hits for massive damage and then projects a bunch of invisible rays in all directions, doing massive damage to anything in the way. Sort of interesting, but it's really a glorified rocket launcher and you kind of need to understand how it works to make the most of it. Quake, meanwhile, had the lightning gun, which functionally was just a high-speed, high-damage hit-scan weapon that's admittedly quite spectacular to watch in action. And the same could be said of the gluon gun, the last gun you get in Half-Life. It's an example from Mouse PI that made me think about all this, the freeze gun, which functions more or less identically to the freeze thrower from Duke Nukem 3D, so let's make this a twofer. Fire it at an enemy for long enough and you freeze them solid. Okay, but here's the problem. The freeze gun can't actually kill them. They just unthaw after a while and go back to trying to kill you. You have to switch to another gun and shoot the frozen enemy to finish them off. The obvious question that follows is, why wouldn't we just use a normal gun in the first place? A freeze ability would be useful to temporarily remove threats from a battle against multiple opponents, but only if it worked really fast, and both these guns require prolonged sustained fire and a lot of consumed ammo to function. And besides, you know what would be an even easier way to remove a threat? Killing it with one of your other efficient death dealers. This all brings me back around to the question I posed at the start. Fun though it is to experiment with silly, elaborate weapons, sooner or later we naturally gravitate back to the tools that allow us to most efficiently complete our tasks. And I feel like I keep encountering games with exotic weapons which fail one very simple test. I call it the WJUAG test, which stands for why not just use a gun? I've played more than one game where there's a gun with the gimmick that you have to shoot something full of bullets and then press the Alt fire button to activate the bullets. And what on earth is the point of a gun that's just a normal gun with extra steps? Saros, the new game that's basically Returnal but orange, has one of those. It fires mini chainsaws that lodge in enemies and damage them faster if you hold down the Alt fire button. It's creative and kind of fun to use, but if you asked me if it would be my weapon of choice, well, WNJUAG, because a normal gun would just do damage without me needing to hover over the bullets after the fact, giving them instructions like a fussy helicopter parent. There's also secondary weapons in Saros. The first one you get is a contact grenade. You fire it hits something, it explodes, can't complain. The second one you find shoots a bunch of blue things into the air that stay there for a second before flying into the nearest dude and making their health bar blue, after which the blue part gradually ticks away. And after trying to employ it for a couple of runs, I was forced to ask WNJUA contact grenade. Before long, every time it showed up, I was using up all my reroll items trying to make it turn into the contact grenade instead. And this doesn't just apply to guns. Mouse PI also features pianos and anvils dangling from the ceiling that you can shoot to bring them down upon enemies below. But if we're in a position where we can see the enemies and the piano, and we could conceivably point at either, WNJUAG, especially since pianos and anvils take time to fall, so there's a timing factor. I also think of games where you have pets or companions that can be ordered to attack targets. Again, if you're already pointing at the enemy, and you've got a gun of your own, and your Alsatian can't run as fast as a fucking bullet, no matter how many tummy rubs he's had, then WNJUAG. So that's my little moan of the day, really. Game designers, when adding creative new mechanics to your shooters, just take a little moment to ask yourself, WNJUAG. Maybe think about if there's something else your exotic weapons could be doing that doesn't fall back on the usual business of pointing at a thing and pressing a button to damage the thing. Personally, I'm always fond of a power that charms an enemy into doing your bidding. I always grab those with both hands, because it instantly removes a threat, while simultaneously giving the enemy a new one to deal with that's already behind their lines. Little bit overpowered, actually, but never mind. That's the slogan to remember, WNJUAG. I'm going to get little wristbands printed. I figure they'd be useful both for shooter designers and also for corrupt politicians in Washington who want to remind themselves, why not just undermine the Attorney General?
The good people at Foundry VTT have created their own game world, Ember. This is a virtual sandbox with over 25,000 explorable hexes, 30 different biomes, and hundreds of gameplay events. Ember is also out right now in early access.
But I didn't back the Kickstarter or pre-purchase Ember. Am I gonna miss out?
You can still get in on the fun. It's just $100 for all that Ember has to offer. And that only gets you an estimated 2 years of full gameplay.
Whoa, 2 years? That's twice as long as the TV show Alien Nation.
Sure. Ember is a full world ready to explore either using Dungeons and Dragons, or you can play using the Crucible system, which was built by the Foundry team specifically to redefine the digital TTRPG experience. Head on over to foundryvtt.com/Ember to learn more and start your adventure today.